Radiant assault. The brisk autumn chill could be felt as the breeze washed over Jenny's bare shoulders. It had been summer only 5 minutes ago. She had entered the House of Horrors roller coaster ride, with clunky machine work and caged horrors of latex figures and rubber masks, depicting gruesome scenes of violence behind chicken wire screen walls. Then she heard a grandfather clock strike 3 and a wave or temporal magic washed over her and her 4 companions. Now she stood outside the Hose of Horrors, once more back in the Carnival of Wonders. But laid out before her there were no longer thrill rides and booths selling a plethora of fatty foods and rigged games, nor vibrant colors and sounds that overwhelmed the senses. Everything from rides and booths alike were in shambles, decay, and disrepair. Cobbled and asphalt paths moments ago clogged with children screaming and laughing with delight, with parents tightly clutching their kids' hands. Park employees in costumes or manning gaming booths were simply gone. Just a deafening silence that permeated throughout the park, an empty void. As if to make any noise would give permission for some unspeakable evil to step forth from the shadows. "What just happened?" asked Caden. Everyone snapped their attention to the paladin. He tilted his head to the side and offered a look of annoyance at everyone's shock that he would dare to speak. "Guys, we have to discuss a plan, even in the presence of Candyland's bastard cousin, Creepy Kingdom," Caden said. "He's right," said Brenda, as she placed her hand over her sword hilt. As another paladin of the Divine Region, she was prepared for the unexpected. Granted, even this was a bit out of her realm of expertise. "How exactly did 8 teenagers go missing here again?" said Harold, the last paladin of the group. "Not sure," answered Devon. "Best my uncle could figure is that they were lured into the House of Horrors and then disappeared. Apparently, they shifted into this reality." "How did you discover the temporal anomaly?" asked Harold. The others looked at him surprised with his word choice. "What? I read sci-fi." "I discovered it by accident. In the morning or afternoon, when the clock strikes 3, it pushes you into this place," said Devon. "But it only seems to last an hour. In the house," he gestured back towards the haunted house, "or not, at 4 o'clock you are shunted back to our reality. Or at least I have been each time." "But not the kids," said Jenny. "No, not as far as I can tell," said Devon. "Why not?" asked Jenny, "and why haven't more people been taken?" Devon could only shrug. Whatever is causing this, it only started a week or so ago, and my best guess is that while it can't decide who gets stuck in the trap, it can decide who it keeps in the trap, Devon said. "As for the second part, the haunted house is closed for the summer for repairs. Even the kids shouldn't have been inside." "Comforting," said Brenda dryly. "Like Caden said, we need a plan, and apparently we have a time limit of less than an hour." She turned her attention to Devon. "Where have you searched?" Devon pulled out a printed map of the modern-day park, not the current Rustworld one. Unfolding it, he showed 5 locations he had already covered: the haunted house, the music hall, Ferris wheel, the game zone, and security daycare area. "So, is this a complete replica of the actual park?" asked Caden. Devon was already shaking his head. "No, for example, the haunted house here is a walkthrough and not a ride. Plus, it has an upper level and attic." He pointed to the Ferris wheel next. "This isn't here. Instead, it's a tilt-a-whirl ride." Jenny glancing around. She noticed a Ferris wheel off in the distance, made out more easily in the setting sun with its bright lights. An oddity was how well lit the park was. That, and it was clearly twilight here. In their reality, it was 3 in the afternoon. "But this place does have one," Brenda pointed out. Devon nodded. "True, but not everything here mirrors our world. But I had to go based off my map. This park is less accommodating. As it stands, these are the areas I've checked off. At 3 of the 5 of them." He paused to take off his backpack. "I found 3 items of personal effects: a yellow hoodie, a left tennis shoe, and a hairbrush." He placed each of the items on the ground in front of him. The hoodie, once a bright, vibrant yellow, was now faded from multiple washings. The shoe was newer, slightly scuffed, but the sole wasn't worn away. As for the hairbrush, surprisingly, not a follicle to be found. "Allow me," said Brenda as she stepped forward and grabbed the hoodie. "Guía para el dueño. Guide me to the owner." Her divination magic pooled through her and into the hoodie. Within moments, she felt a tether between her and its owner. She wasn't sure how far away, but as she slowly turned in a circle once she hit a southern direction, she felt the link between them tighten. "This way," said Brenda. In addition to being a paladin, she had a special skill in divination magic. She was one of the best search and rescue agents within the Divine region. Devin aligned his map to the direction she was pointing in and sighed. Everyone turned their attention to him. "What?" they all asked in unison. "The funhouse," said Devin, dread in his voice. "That goes to the funhouse." Everyone shared a look before Harold spoke up. "What's wrong with the funhouse?" "I've been avoiding it," said Devin. He held up his hand before anyone could interrupt further. "It's evil. I mean, seriously tainted and corrupt." "And you didn't think to look there first?" said Caden. "Hey, I may be a vampire, but I'm not invulnerable," said Devin. "Whatever is in that place is bad. That's why I hoped I would be able to find the kids elsewhere in the park. Hoping maybe to get them back before whatever that monster is found them." "Clearly that plan didn't work," muttered Jenny. "Which is why I told my uncle about it and he called you people in," said Devin. "I'll admit I was hoping we could avoid it, or that maybe the kids were being kept elsewhere. But obviously, at least one of them is there. His name is Kevin, the one that hoodie belongs to." "Well, the sooner we get moving, the sooner we get Kevin back," said Brenda before marching forward. "Everyone, move out." Caden, Harold, and Jenny, a light arcane soul forger, honorary paladin on parole, followed close behind. Devin took up rear guard after putting the other two objects back in his backpack. In about 10 minutes, the group found themselves outside the Rowdy Ruckus funhouse. Despite their initial disappointment with Devin withholding information and his concerns about the funhouse, the closer they got, the more they understood. They all had to resist the urge to turn back, to leave. Their entire bodies rejected the building's very existence. The best way to describe it was that they felt dirty. There was only one word for it: wrong. The building's very existence was wrong. 30 minutes, said Caden. "We have 30 minutes to get in and find Kevin." "Hopefully all of them," said Jenny. She took that opportunity to set an alarm on her phone. Everyone nodded in agreement. They stepped through the gaping maw of a malformed beast, one of its eyes missing, and some of the teeth around the tunnel entrance were broken off. Clearly, it wasn't any more specially taken care of than anything else in the park. The tunnel, which seemed to wobble slightly as they entered it, clearly once had the ability to rotate, but the slight shift it created was easily ignored. As they stepped out of the tunnel and into the first area, they found themselves in a hall of mirrors. Crunching emanated through the hollow space as they stepped on shards of glass strewn about the floor. What few mirrors remained intact enough to provide reflection showed distorted images and even altered forms of the people whose reflections were captured, almost as if the viewer was perceiving a nightmare version of themselves. Everyone turned to Brenda. She refocused on her power. Normally, when you get closer to the target, the link gets stronger. The created tether almost pulled you toward the target. The moment they passed through the tunnel, her link seemed to only be weakening. She shook her head. "Something's blocking me. I'm losing the connection the deeper we go." Harold, glancing at his wristwatch, grimaced. "We have 15 minutes until we are shunted back. That's not enough time to find anyone, especially if we just aimlessly search." "Can you smell them?" Jenny asked Devin. Devin was about to argue when he figured they had nothing to lose. He took the hoodie from Brenda and inhaled deeply. He didn't get Kevin's scent, but he did catch a whiff of something else in the air. A taint that most supernaturals were warned of as children. His eyes widened when he realized he recognized the smell of rot. "Boogeyman," he whispered. Caden, Brenda, and Harold each circled back on each other, keeping their backs close. Each of their holy avengers was unscabbarded and empowered with radiant light as they pooled their life force into the soul runes. Devin himself allowed his virus to flow through himself fully, shifting from his human state to his more demonic form, elongated teeth and claws, his hearing and smelling becoming even sharper. Superhuman strength and agility infused his tendons and ligaments. Jenny cast a spell, Révéler les ténèbres, reveal the darkness. Her spell piercing through the shadows of the funhouse. It was then they noticed a 13-year-old boy standing at one of the openings between the mirrors. His clothes were disheveled and dirty. He was barefoot, and both old and fresh blood stained his torn blue shirt. "Joey," said Devon, stepping forward. Jenny went to grab Devon's wrist, but the vampire was already rushing toward the kid. "Stop," Jenny called out, but just as Devon approached, he realized at the last moment this wasn't Joey, as the young boy shot out his arm and shoved the vampire back with such crushing force that had he been human, he would be dead. The three paladins didn't hesitate, rushing forward, ready to strike. The boogeyman smiled, revealing sharp and stained, elongated teeth. It merely shook its head and stepped back into the darkness beyond Jenny's spell. The three paladins stopped short. They had heard too many tales within their training of overzealous paladins that rushed in blind and were carried out in a body bag. Jenny was overlooking Devon's injuries as she helped him up. The initial blow had been the most devastating, but it, along with the minor cuts from the glass shards, were already healing. Like werewolves, vampires healed quickly, but where werewolves required sustenance and rest to sustain and rejuvenate themselves, vampires required blood from living prey. If Devon kept maintaining this kind of damage, he would need to feed soon. "You good?" Jenny asked. Devon nodded. "Fine, just embarrassed. It was able to mask its true nature." Her phone alarm went off. Everyone prepared for the shift, but after a few seconds, nothing happened. "I think it's decided to keep us trapped here," she said, as she showed everyone her phone now reading 2 minutes past 4 o'clock. The group shared a look before they turned their attention to the way deeper into the maze, and by extension, the funhouse. "So," said Devon, "who wants to go first?" Caden's Holy Avenger decapitated the ghoul's head from its body. 5, he called out before catching his breath. Brenda and Harold were also recovering from the fight. The 3 of them stood among a group of 12 bodies, each of them ghouls, decayed bodies that hungered for dead flesh. Granted, the victim didn't have to be dead long before it consumed them. They had found their way out of the mirror chamber and barely taken 3 steps into the next room, when the hall shifted suddenly, and before anyone could react, they rotated away from Jenny and Devon. Once the movement stopped, the 3 of them waited a moment to see if the hallway would shift again, but no such luck. They had moved into the next chamber, a makeshift mausoleum. When they arrived in the center of a main foyer, 2 side-branching passages released 2 groups of the flesh-devouring undead. The 3 of them, working in unison, had been able to beat the creatures down with minimal harm to themselves. And the enchanted runes on their armor had provided some additional warding against the creature's paralytic venom. "Now where?" asked Harold. He was vigilant of their surroundings, but his question was directed towards Brenda. She shook her head. "I don't know. I already tried basic tracking spell for Jenny and got nothing." "Nothing," said Caden in surprise. "Like I said earlier, something about this place is interfering with my magic," replied Brenda. "So we just pick a direction and go?" asked Harold. "Looks that way," said Caden. Brenda grunted her agreement before turning towards what appeared to be a double-door exit from the mausoleum. "I suggest we find a way out instead of deeper in." Both men nodded in agreement, and the 3 of them approached a double stone door. While there was some initial resistance, it required little effort between the 3 of them to push it open. Beyond the door, they found themselves stepping to the edge of a giant slide tube, twisting down into a dark abyss. "Fun, fun, fun," muttered Harold. "Gus, it's my turn to go first?" Caden and Brenda didn't argue. Devon ripped the throat out of another life-size doll, this one dressed as a superhero. Jenny, having taken the fireman axe from the first doll that Devon had eliminated, cut downward on her own assailant, a doll dressed as a baker that was bombarding her with hard rolls from a breadbasket. Really hard rolls. Lucky, the doll's aim was terrible and the first roll had mostly glanced off her shoulder, or she could have easily been knocked out cold. Despite their attackers not being alive, they thankfully succumbed to their injuries like the living. However, it quickly became apparent that that advantage would be short-lived, as Jenny noticed that each of the downed dolls was starting to reanimate. "Devin, they're getting back up," said Jenny as she began backing her way over to him. She delivered an extra cut or slash to the ones down on the ground as she passed. But it was clear her newer inflicted injuries were lacking the same level of impact as the initial ones, as if the dolls were assimilating to the assaults. "We need to get out of here," said Devin as they began desperately looking around for an exit. "I'm open to suggestions," Jenny snapped as she beheaded another doll, this one a police officer with a baton. "This way," a voice echoed from a nearby floor-length mirror. Devin and Jenny shared a look of uncertainty. Until another wave of murder dolls made their way into the room, these ones dressed in the attire of a circus group, ringmaster, clowns, and acrobats. "Mirror," the two said in unison and rushed through the reflective service. Surprisingly, what had appeared to be perfect glass was a rippling portal that coughed them out once more into the haunted house. "Did it send us back?" asked Jenny. Devin, thinking quickly, yanked the axe from Jenny's hands and brought it down on the mirror they had exited just as a dummy was starting to make its way through. What had been a portal on their end was just a regular mirror on this end. One broken shard of glass had a doll hand partially sticking through as evidence. Devin fell to the ground, breathing heavily. Jenny, not pleased with her choice, but decided it was the lesser evil of an option, presented Devin with her wrist. He didn't hesitate and began to drink from Jenny. With what seemed to take forever, but had been less than a minute, Devin pulled himself away and shrieked back into a corner. Jenny, before losing any more strength, channeled her power. Réparer la chair et reconstituer le sang, mend the flesh and replenish the blood. Her power repaired the physical damage, but her arcane strength was dwindling. She would need to eat soon. "Devin," said a boy's voice from behind them, "you came." Both Jenny and Devin turned their attention to the boy. "Kevin," said Devin as he stood. He had cleaned his mouth and reverted to his human form. He rushed over but stopped short as a magical ward went up, barring him from getting too close. "Hey," said Kevin. He was similar in appearance to the fake Joey, dirty clothes, malnourished, and old blood. "Are you all right?" asked Jenny, concern clear in her voice. Kevin shrugged. "I don't know, I don't think so, but I'm alive." Devin nodded. "Did you do that with the mirror?" he asked. Kevin shook his head. "No, that's just how the monster gets around. He traps us in these mirror rooms and locks us in these pentagrams." Worry crossed Kevin's face. "He took my little brother Charlie." "Have you found him?" Devin and Jenny both shook their heads. "Can you get me out of here? I need to find him," asked Kevin. Devin turned to Jenny. Jenny sighed, then knelt before the pentagram and opened herself up to the arcane nexus. Said Devin. "How and what are you doing?" "Do you know what soul forging is?" Jenny asked by way of response. "It's how paladins' weapons and armor is made," said Kevin. Jenny looked at him a bit surprised. "I was fascinated by them when I was a kid," Kevin said. Jenny nodded. "Well, the process of soul forging requires an arcane magic user to tap into raw magic energy and infuse that power into an object." "Okay," said Devin. "It's a skill that takes months if not years to master," said Jenny. "I, however, decided to take the shortcut route." "What's the shortcut?" asked Kevin. "Letting myself get possessed by a demon who then hyperlinked me to a magical nexus," said Jenny, "which connected me to multiple magical ley lines for around 2 weeks. "Meaning?" asked Devin. Jenny, now open to the magical energies around her, as she expanded her power outward, could literally see the arcane energy laid within the pentagram itself. Not only that, but as she reached out and connected with it, she was able to sense the other 7 pentagrams that were each interlinked with one another. Pentagrams that were biofeedbacking into each other and acting as a battery for the alternate dimension they were currently trapped in. Kill the power. Eliminate the world. Jenny smiled as she allowed herself to connect to the pentagram before her, let her energy fused with the pentagram, and within moments, the other 7 as well. Then she simply siphoned the magical energy into herself. Instead of channeling the power away or disrupting it, she simply redirected it, much easier and far less melodramatic. Within moments, each pentagram was nulled, nothing more than etchings on the floor. Finally answering Devon's question, Jenny said, "Meaning, I have a special connection to magic that many arcane wielders can only dream of." She turned to Kevin. "You're free now." Kevin didn't move. He just looked at her in awe. Started Devon after a moment. "You're glowing." Jenny looked down at herself, and indeed she was glowing. More than that, she felt herself vibrating with power, fully charged as if she had eaten and rested. It occurred to her then that the alternate dimension should have dissipated without its battery source, which made her come to a sickening realization. She hadn't drained the battery source, she had merely transferred that role into herself. Probably why she hadn't exploded. The dimension was still siphoning off the excess power. The question now remained how she could dissipate the energy rapidly enough that she could end up being the kill switch to destroy the alternate dimension, free everyone, while also not blowing herself up in the process. At that moment, a heavily cloaked figure cast the entire room in shadows, so dark that even Jenny did nothing to penetrate the darkness surrounding them. Within a moment, the shadows receded, leaving both Devon and Kevin alone in the bedroom. Jenny, however, was gone. The ball pit was roughly thigh-deep for the three paladins, which was fortunate. They were able to effectively parry, thrust, and slash with their holy avengers as they cautiously made their way to the edge of the ball pit. Only hampered by the various grasping tentacles that seemed to be reaching out from the shadowy beyond that seemed to be swirling around them. "Incoming, 3 o'clock, said Brenda, as she slashed downward at the octopus appendage racing towards her. Her flaming blade easily dismembering the tentacle, whose owner emitted a screeching wail of agony as it retracted what was left. Caden and Harold remained at the ready, waiting for their own assailants to reach from the void beyond. Nothing came. It was Caden who realized they had finally reached the edge of the pit. Without hesitation, he sheathed his weapon and swung over the edge. Within the same moment, he drew his blade once more, expecting something to charge him at any moment. Harold and Brenda dropped down beside him, also redrawing their weapons. Each of them perspiring from both physical and magical exhaustion. They had been drawing on their soul-forged magic much longer than they should have, both through their armor and blade. After what seemed like forever, but was more accurately a minute, they all allowed their magic to peter out and took a moment to collect themselves. Soul-forged magic drew on the wielder's very life force, their soul. Such a thing wasn't unheard of. Dark fae and demons were well known for wielding the life force of their victims for various forms of magic. Paladins simply used their own life force to draw upon. As long as they had sufficient time to recover, normally through food and rest, but also life experiences in general, would regenerate souls also. But, in such a high stressful environment and danger hiding behind every corner, the three of them found it difficult to let down their guard. Had Jenny been with them, her magic would have been able to help replenish their souls as well, as her magic was directly correlated to healing, vitality, and life. No such luck. The three silently crept forward, uncertain where they were going, but after the slide had popped them into a ball pit of tentacle fun time, they had little interest in jumping in blindly to whatever was beyond the room they currently found themselves in. "Hello," said a small voice. The three paladins had their hands on the hilt of their blades once more. A filthy teenage girl stepped out of the shadows. The three paladins looked at one another. "Revelar el mal interior," reveal the evil within, cast Brenda, resisting the wave of fatigue that washed over her. She was officially tapped out. Brenda sighed relief. The girl before them was at the very least human and not a threat. Well, she wasn't evil, though in the world of the supernatural, evil carried a lot of contexts. "She's good," Brenda said aloud before her legs collapsed out from under her. Caden caught her and guided her gently to the ground. Harold moved to direct some of his energy into her, but Brenda shook her head. "You two are doing much better than me." "Yes, but if you can't move, then we can't make our way out of here," said Harold. "He has a point, Brenda," agreed Caden. "What's wrong with her?" asked the girl. "She's just tired," answered Harold as he waited for Brenda to give him the okay to help her. After a moment, Brenda relented. So, as not to put themselves in a similar state, both Harold and Caden pooled some of their energy into Brenda via the Soul Forge rune on their armor, temporarily interlinking their power. Brenda nodded her head when she felt the strength return to her legs and the room slowly started to stop spinning. "Do you know how to get out of here?" asked the girl. "No, but we're trying to figure that out," said Caden. "Where did you come from and who are you?" asked Harold. "Sarah, I work at the carnival," she said. "I was trapped in some weird devil symbol thing, but a moment ago it stopped glowing and I was able to leave." "Do you know where any of the other kids are?" asked Brenda. Sarah's eyes opened wide at that. "Other kids? You mean I'm not the only one who got taken?" "No, you're not the only one, but you are the first one we've found," said Brenda. "Technically she found us," said Harold. Caden and Brenda gave him a look. "I'm just saying," said Harold. Brenda was finally able to pick herself up. "Let's get moving." She proceeded to make her way to an exit that read Pie Room. Caden followed suit. Harold motioned for Sarah to follow as he took up rear guard again. Devin was relieved, after he busted down the door to the bedroom, to find they were still in the funhouse and hadn't been teleported back to the haunted house. He took point and led Kevin down a long hallway. After what had felt like 10 minutes, it occurred to Devin, the hallway was an optical illusion. They had literally passed the same room, clock, and picture of an old woman in a rocking chair knitting a scarf 4 times before Devin realized they hadn't made any progression. "So how do we get out of here?" asked Kevin. Devin looked around to see if there were any anomalies in the area. Nothing seemed to change or shift if he went forwards or backwards. "The clock!" exclaimed Kevin. Devin looked at the clock, and sure enough, the hour would progress forward if they went up that hallway and downward if they went backwards. Devin approached the clock and attempted to move it. No such luck. The time device was set thoroughly in place. He opened the front of it and listened intently to its inner mechanics. He attempted to stop the clock, but it still kept ticking away regardless of what he did. Devin had even raced backwards, thinking he could go back in time to stop Jenny from being taken, but while the clock's face changed, he didn't go back in time. "This is getting us nowhere," snapped Devin. Kevin thought about it a moment, then realized that maybe the way out wasn't the clock, but the picture. As if the clock itself was a distraction. He went to the painting and started to fiddle with the frame. Sure enough, he found a switch at the bottom of the frame. He flicked it, and to both Devin and his surprise, the picture slid to the side, revealing a passage behind it. "Good job," said Devin, before he took the lead and headed deeper down the newly revealed side passage. Kevin followed. "What did you do?" demanded the boogeyman. His pale, bald head and jaundiced eyes were the only things visible, his body cloaked in a robe of black shadows, no longer taking the form of a teenage boy. Jenny simply sat within the iron cage that she had been forced into. The boogeyman sneered. Jenny returned it in kind. The boogeyman charged the cage. Jenny was unimpressed. She was this reality's power source now. If he did anything to her, the world would come crashing down. Jenny was currently powerless to save herself, but in a position of absolute control as the boogeyman had no leverage over her. "Listen to me, child," started the boogeyman. "Give me back the magic willingly, or I'll take it from you." Jenny barked out a laugh. "Then take it," she said. The boogeyman made no move against her. "So," said Jenny, "I'm guessing you can't take it from me." Jenny's confidence began to slip as she noticed the boogeyman smiled at her with nothing but its rotting teeth. "You're right, I can't take it from you," the boogeyman started, "but I can make you give it back." "How?" "Your friends, or the children I've trapped here. You see, the problem with having people you care about is that you provide the enemy with a weakness they can exploit," said the boogeyman. "So, child, you have a choice. Return to me the magic you stole, or I start taking lives." The side auditorium doors crashed open simultaneously. On the right limped in 3 exhausted paladins and a teenage girl. On the left came Devin, Kevin, and the 6 remaining kids. One Jenny guessed must have been Charlie because he kept close to Kevin and they had a similarity of noses and cheekbones. Both parties slammed their doors shut respectively and braced themselves against them. "What do you guys have?" yelled Devin. "Pie golem," yelled back Harold. "You?" "A mechanical bear. We just came from a fun zone that was like stepping into 4 nights at Frankie's," said Devin. The boogeyman laughed, everyone turning their attention to him momentarily. "You see," he said to Jenny, "give back the magic you stole, and I can end all of this, or once again be the reason innocent people die." Jenny couldn't argue his point. She had been the reason 5 camp counselors at her summer camp had lost their lives. Not intentionally. It had been a demon that had possessed her. But she had summoned it. She had been the one to willingly make the deal. Boogeyman had a knack for reading one's fears. It was no surprise he read hers so easily. The only reason the paladins hadn't executed her for her crimes was the fact she hadn't been a willing participant. But instead of serving jail time, thanks to her newly acquired ability to soul forge, they allowed her to pay her debt off to society by creating the very armor and weapons they used to fight the very evil she had allowed to enter hers. Jenny realized something in that moment. She was a soul forger. She took a deep breath and stopped herself from smiling, adopting a look of defeat and anger toward the boogeyman. "Fine," Jenny said. "You win. I'll give you back your magic." "Smart girl." The boogeyman stepped towards the cage. He placed his hands down upon the ground and called forth a pentagram fully encompassing Jenny. Jenny steadied her breathing and detached from the experience, focusing her anger at the monster in front of her. Now was not the time for a panic attack. "We need to bar the doors," yelled Brenda. "With what?" snapped Caden, the bolted-down stadium seats. Brenda and Harold gave him a look. "Sorry, I get a little snarky when I'm about to die," said Caden. There was a scream from across the auditorium as their door was finally wrenched open by none other than a defunct, robotic Frankie Fuzzy Bear who could only be described as evil. "Get the kids out of here," ordered Devin as he rushed forward and landed a solid uppercut under Frankie's jaw. The robot's head teetered backwards, and the rest of his body followed. But clearly unable to feel pain, the robot recovered quickly and lunged for the vampire. Devin was able to easily spring backwards and keep himself at bay as he fully let his virus take hold once more. But, unfortunately, he wasn't the robot's target. The kids were. Frankie, ignoring Devin after his initial charge towards him, simply altered direction and began to rush up the main theater aisle at the kids who were scrambling for the main auditorium doors. Sarah, seeing her friends in danger, grabbed Caden's Holy Avenger and then vanished. Before anyone could react, they heard Sarah scream as she stabbed the sword into the robot's stomach. "Did she just teleport?" asked Harold. Frankie, after looking down at the weapon protruding from his stomach, lunged at Sarah. She teleported, sans sword, and appeared next to the other kids, who, after much struggling, realized the doors were locked from the outside. "Yep, she teleported all right," answered Brenda. "With my Holy Avenger," Caden said dryly. It was in that moment their last bout of strength gave way to the golem, and they all fell backwards as their door was shoved open, and before them stood a creature right out of a horror cooking show. A pie man figure with strawberry filling pooling out of the creature's eyes and mouth, giving it the appearance of bleeding. It was admittedly impressively disturbing. The boogeyman completed the pentagram. "Channel the energy back into here," and the boogeyman hesitated. "I will release your friends." Jenny wasn't stupid. The boogeyman had chosen his words carefully. None of these people, save maybe Caden, were her friends, meaning that Caden may be free but everyone else would be stuck in the demented theme park, including herself. Jenny opened her power once more, allowing for herself to connect to the raw magical energy within her. She lowered her hand to the pentagram. She felt the boogeyman's power once more. His magic was twisted, not demonic, fey, or the natural world. It was something broken, as if his power came from the void itself. The nothing. She pooled her energy back into the pentagram, well enough of it anyway to alter its purpose. What was a soul forger if not a master of runes? Interconnection of arcane symbols to enchant magic into steel. allowing anyone with mental and physical fortitude to forge their power. The boogeyman, realizing all too late what she had done, rushed towards her out of reflex, only to be blasted backwards. She turned her cell into a magical focal point of power, Jenny herself becoming a conduit of power. She then focused on Caden's holy avenger. Devin had sprang on Frankie's back and was desperately trying to off-balance the robot, but the machine was better balanced than he could hope for and continued, though somewhat hampered, towards the kids, until it felt an intense heat within its guts. It looked down to see the sword within its abdomen glowing a molten white. Devin noticed it too. He got a better purchase on Frankie's back and flipped forward onto the ground. He then gracefully spun around, grabbing the Holy Avenger by the hilt, which surprisingly remained cool to the touch, and dislodged the weapon free of the machine. Not wanting to lose his momentum, Devin continued the spin, placing both hands upon the blade's hilt and aiming precisely through Frankie's neck joints and decapitating the robot's head, which bounced upon the ground a couple of times, then rolled back down to the theater pit. "Cool," said Joey, one of the younger kids. The others just nodded their heads in agreement. The pie golem was, well, as easy a pie to deal with. As Jenny activated the paladin's healing ruins and pooled her power into them, feeling fully rejuvenated, Harold and Brenda quickly dispatched the golem into small pieces, though not evenly cut. Caden, his weapon currently being utilized elsewhere, braced his shield arm and charged the boogeyman, infusing himself with strength. The boogeyman, who had begun to recover and stand up, was bull-rushed and shoved backwards. Devin, giving a piercing whistle, held up Caden's weapon. Sarah appeared next to Devin, snagged the weapon, and within a single beat appeared next to Caden, offering it back to him, an apologetic expression on her face. "Thank you," said Caden as he retook his weapon. "Just ask next time," he said as he rushed towards the boogeyman, sword at the ready. Brenda and Harold were close on his heels. The boogeyman snarled and cast out his cloak of shadows, drawing forth the darkness and Rayonnement du soleil, radiance of the sun, cast Jenny. A warm sphere of light appeared above the center of the theater house and cast away all shadows. Even the boogeyman's cloak disintegrated to nothing, leaving a gaunt, naked man cowering from the light. The children were all thankfully covering their eyes from the sheer brightness of it. As it was not truly the sun and it was light magic, no harm was coming to them, but it was still impossible to look at it directly. Even Jenny had her eyes closed, the spell strong enough that Jenny's excessive magic petered out. As the three paladins circled around the boogeyman in his weakened state, the monster, in a last-ditch effort to escape, snapped his fingers, and everything went black. Then the sound of screaming children jolted everyone back to reality. All of them stood once more in the Carnival of Wonders, surrounded by guests and employees alike. Loud music playing from speakers and their noses hit with the sickly sweet smell of deep-fried food. Everyone was accounted for. Devin's uncle had called in a gate specialist to verify the extra-dimensional pocket had been officially locked. It had. Whatever the boogeyman had done to escape had severed his connection to the haunted house and hopefully their reality for some time to come. All the kids were safe, and the team was rewarded for their efforts. Well, the Divine Region was paid, and the team each received a bonus on their paychecks, including Jenny, who, thanks her heroic efforts, was removed from probation and elevated to true paladin status. While she appreciated the promotion, she was fully aware the Divine Region saw her as a weapon, one they planned to keep as close to them as possible, and would no doubt eliminate if they perceived her as a threat.